Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Ananta Koti Vaishnavin ki Jai.
Jai.
Iskar Amracharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.
Jai.
Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki
Jai.
Jai. Prince of Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shyam Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham ki Jai. Navadvip Mayapur Dham ki Jai. Ganga Mai ki Jai. Jamuna Mai ki Jai. Tulsi Devi ki Jai. Bhakti Devi ki Jai. Gaur Prem Anande. All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glory to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga Hari Hari.
Haribo.
Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Vishesha Shunyavani Pasha Deshatani. Hare Krishna. So, actually we have two verses today. I'm just going to read the first one and then we'll chant at number 37. So, as most of you know, the Bhagavad Gita was, who are the participants in the Bhagavad Gita?
Lord Krishna.
Lord Krishna. Yes. Just see. So, it's actually a dialogue. It's not a one-way communication, but so today, there's going to be a question and then an answer. And a question and an answer, okay? And it's a very appropriate question and answer for us people here in this world, because we have, we're all kind of struggling. Are you ever struggling from time to time? He says, he admits it. Sometimes we don't want to, especially guys. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Bhagavad Gita, as it is, chapter 3, text 36. I'm just going to read through this one, and then we'll focus on 37. Okay? Okay, so this is Arjuna's question. Arjuvacha. We're going to chant the next one. Thank you for being so enthusiastic. You must be Rajiv. Okay. Atakena prayuktoyam papam charati purusha anichan apivashneya balani variyojita. Arjun said, O descendant of Vishnu, by what is one impelled to sinful acts even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? Purport. So, in your own words, without looking at the board, what was the question? Without looking at it. Can anybody paraphrase it? I'm putting you on the spot, I know that. Come on. Yes.
Arjun asked why someone is engaged in doing sinful acts as if they're being forced to do it.
Yeah, but how is it happening? Okay. Very good. Purport. A living entity, as part and parcel of the Supreme, is originally spiritual, pure, and free from all material contaminations. Therefore, by nature, she is not subject to the sins of the material world. But when she is in contact with material nature, she acts in many sinful ways without hesitation, and sometimes even against her will. As such, Arjuna's question to Krishna is very sanguine, as to be as to the perverted nature of the living entities. Although the living entity sometimes does not want to act in sin, he still is forced to act. Sinful actions are not, however, impelled by the supersoul within, but are due to another cause, as the Lord explains in the next verse. Okay? So this is the verse where we'll keep that verse in mind, but this is now where Krishna answers. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Kama Esha Krodha Esha.
Kama Esha Krodha Esha.
Rajoguna Samudbhava.
Rajaguna Samudbhava.
Mahashanu Mahapatma.
Mahashanu Mahapadma.
Vidyinam Ihavairinam.
Vidinam Ihaninam.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Kama Esha Krodha Esha.
Kama Esha Krodha Esha.
Rajoguna Samudbhava.
Rajaguna Samudbhava.
Mahashanu Mahapatma.
Mahashano Mahapatma.
Vidyenam Ihavairinam.
Vidyenam Ihavarinam.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Kama Esha Krodha Esha.
Kama Esha Krodha Esha.
Rajoguna Samudbhava.
Samudbhava.
Mahashano Mahapatma. Vidyenam Ihavairinam.
Vidyenam Ihavarinam.
Please chant. Somebody.
Kamayesha Krodha Esha
Esha Krodha Esha.
Rajoguna Samudbhavam
Rajaguna Samudbhava.
Mahashano Mahapatma
Mahashano Mahapadma.
Vaidvinam Ivam Vairinam
Vidyenam Ihavarinam.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Kama Esha Krodha Esha.
Kama Esha Krodha Esha.
Rajoguna Samudbhava.
Rajaguna Samudbhava.
Mahasano Mahapatma.
Mahashano Mahapatma.
Vidyenam Ihavarinam.
Vidyenam Ihavarinam.
Yes, in the back there. Go ahead.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Kama Esha Krodha Esha. Rajaguna Samudbhava. Mahashano Mahapadma. Vidyenam Ihavarinam.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Kama Esha Krodha Esha.
Kama Esha Krodha Esha.
Rajoguna Samudbhava.
Rajaguna Samudbhava.
Mahashano Mahapadma.
Mahashano Mahapadma.
Vidyenam Ihavarinam.
Vidyenam Ihavarinam.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Personality of Godhead said.
Kama.
Kama.
Lust.
Lust.
Esha.
Esha.
This. Krodha. Wrath. Esha. This. Rajaguna.
Rajaguna.
The mode of passion.
The mode of passion.
Samudbhava. Born of.
Born of.
Mahashana.
Mahashana.
All devouring.
All devouring.
Mahapatma.
Padma. Greatly sinful.
Vidhi.
Vidhi.
No. Enam. This. Iha. In the material world.
In the material world.
Vaidinam.
Vaidinam.
The greatest enemy.
The the greatest enemy.
Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "It is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of the contact with the material mode of passion, and later transformed into wrath, which is the all-devouring, sinful enemy of this world." Strong language, isn't it? Purport. When a living entity comes in contact with the material creation, his eternal love for Krishna is transformed into lust in association with the mode of passion. Or in other words, the sense of love of God becomes transformed into lust as milk in contact with sour tamarind is transformed into yogurt. Then again, when lust is unsatisfied, what happens? It turns to wrath. Wrath is transformed into illusion, and illusion continues the material existence. Therefore, lust is the greatest enemy of the living entity, and it is lust only which induces the pure living entity to remain entangled in the material world. Wrath is the manifestation of the mode of ignorance. These modes exhibit themselves as wrath and other corollaries. If therefore the mode of passion, instead of being degraded into the mode of ignorance, is elevated to the mode of goodness by the prescribed method of living and acting, then one can be saved from the degradation of wrath by spiritual attachment. The Supreme Personality of God expanded himself into many for his ever-increasing spiritual bliss. And the living entities are parts and parcels of this spiritual bliss. They also have partial independence, but by misuse of their independence, when the service attitude is transformed into the propensity for sense enjoyment, they come under the sway of lust. The material creation is created by the Lord to give facility to the conditioned souls to fulfill these lustful propensities, and when completely baffled by prolonged lustful activities, the living entities begin to inquire about their real position. This inquiry is the beginning of the Vedanta Sutras, wherein it is said, "Atato Brahma Jigyasa." One should inquire into the Supreme, and the Supreme is defined in Srimad Bhagavatam as Janmadhyasya Yaton Vayatitaratascha, or the origin of everything is Supreme Brahman. Therefore, the origin of lust is also in the Supreme. If therefore lust is transformed into love for the Supreme, or transformed into Krishna consciousness, or in other words, desiring everything for Krishna, then both lust and wrath can be spiritualized. Hanuman, the great servitor of Lord Ram, exhibited his wrath by burning the golden city of Ravana. But by doing so, he became the greatest devotee of the Lord. Here also in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord induces Arjuna to engage his wrath upon his enemies for the satisfaction of the Lord. Therefore, lust and wrath, when they are employed in Krishna consciousness, become our friends instead of our enemies. Om Ajnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Urmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishta Sthapitam Jena Putare Swayam Rupakata Mahyam Dadati Shapadantika Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Radha Shiva Shri Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you all for coming today. So this is a very interesting verse spoken by Lord Krishna, particularly if you really think about it, try to understand it in the context of what's going on at this time. So what was happening at the time when this verse was spoken by Lord Krishna? Can you remember it?
Arjuna is fighting a war.
Yeah, very good. It's just before there's a battle, where actually millions of people are going to get killed, right? And so Arjuna is asking Krishna, well, tell me, what's the problem? What's the problem here? And the Lord Krishna could have said, well, your enemy is Duryodhana. On the opposing side, right? He could have said that. Enemies. You're talking enemies, right? Enemies. He could have said, well, Duryodhana. It's Shakuni. In the context of the war, you might think that way. But he didn't say that. He didn't say that. Isn't that interesting? There were so many apparent enemies on the other side. But in response to Arjuna's question of what's causing people to act improperly, Krishna says, when Krishna gives instructions, and that instruction is universal. It's not just for Arjuna, but it's for us too, you and me too. So it's not just that it's Arjuna's biggest enemy, kama, or lust. It's not, but it's each one of our enemies is the same. It's our common enemy. But we are generally so forgetful or deluded that we think nothing of it. I think everything's going on very nicely. And in the world, people think, well, that person's very good, he's a very ambitious person. What is ambition? Ambition means getting stuff for you, which is really us. Anyway, so the enemy here identified by Krishna is not Al-Qaeda. It's not Chinese or Russians or Democrats or Republicans, not capitalists, socialists, or communists, right? It's not blacks, Latins, whites. What is the enemy? What is kama? Lust. And he calls it, and this is Krishna speaking, who knows how it is. Lord Krishna knows. How's it? He knows, because he's the one who created everything. So he knows the story. So it must be that he's not exaggerating. Sometimes we, in this world, we exaggerate to make a point, right? To bring attention to this. But he's telling it like it is. That this is the all-devouring, sinful enemy. It's not exaggeration. But very powerful words. And he should know. In so doing, he's giving us this very, very valuable information. And this information that we're getting here from Krishna, people say you should think outside the box. Have you heard this before? This is outside the box. It is outside the box. That lust is our enemy. Okay? It's information that if we think about it and use it and act on it, we can arrive at a place in our lives that is completely peaceful and happy. But you know something? This information, even this simple verse, is not available in any grade school, middle school, high school, college, graduate school. It's not available anywhere. This is unusual, transcendental, spiritual information. And therefore, it's good. It behooves us to try and understand it in a deep way. Okay? So then, what was identified as our enemy? Our enemy? Lust. Right. So, what is lust? What is it? Who can say?
Desire.
Is it desire? Is lust desire? So when you become spiritually advanced, you have no desire?
Desire what someone else has.
What's that?
Desiring what someone else has.
Desiring what someone else has. Okay. Okay.
That's a material desire.
Material desires. Okay. Okay. These are, we're going, yeah, thinking, yes, sir.
Desire to enjoy independent of Krishna.
Desire to enjoy independent of Krishna. These are very good answers. Yes, back. Yes, yes. I don't know your name, but like your little girl, or not so little maybe. Yes, you could say. Hankering. Okay, okay. So, the great devotee of Lord Chaitanya gave the definition of lust. It's a very interesting definition. You can remember it. It's very, very easy to remember. It goes, it's in Bengali, but I'll translate. Atmendriya priti vancha tare bole ka. Atmendriya means your own senses, priti, satisfying your own senses, vancha, wanting to, that's vancha tare bole ka. That's called lust. Wanting to just satisfy your own senses. Now, we have the material senses, there's 5 knowledge acquiring senses and 5 working senses. And beyond that, there's the mind. So there's selfish interests for the body and selfish interests for the mind. But where that's secondary lust. So for example, we may like to have a certain food that we like. But if we have people who really are on our side and they like to support us, that's a kind of a second, because we know if they like to support us and help us, then they'll give us the food we like, and a bunch of other things, right? So we like to get appreciated by others because we can do a lot of stuff that way. But if we're not, then there's primary and secondary and tertiary kinds of lust. But atmendriya priti vancha tare bole kam. So what's kam? What is it? What's the definition here given in Bengali or in English? Atmendriya priti vancha tare bole kam. What is that? I thought I translated it. Your desire to wanting to satisfy your own senses, gross or subtle, that's called kam. Krishnendriya priti, ichadhare prema. And desiring to satisfy Krishna senses, you know what that's called?
Love.
Prem. That's called love. So the sense gratification is going on. But it's just a matter of where we're applying that. You apply it to our own selves, and that's called kam, lust. And what happens? That kind of application is, here Krishna is saying, that's the sinful enemy of this world. That kind of thing. And if you analyze how things are going on in the world with wars and murders and criminal activities of all kinds, what is the basic seed motivator for all those things that are causing trouble in the world? Atmendriya, isn't it? Everybody's looking. I'm the person, the most important person. I'm going to get stuff for me, and sometimes you're going to stop me from doing that, so I'm going to hate you. I'm going to kill you, or I'm going to mess you up somewhere or another, either individually, in a family, or in countries. Yeah, that's how things are going on. Very simple, basic, simple understanding, but because we're all caught up in this consciousness that all we are this body, we think there's nothing more than Atmendriya Priti. That's the purpose of life, and there is no other purpose of life but to get stuff for our bodies or the bodies of our friends and relatives or our nation. That's all. There's no other purpose in life other than that. And you know what that's called? Illusion. Illusion. There's a story about Indradev. In Vedic histories, there are different planetary systems, and we're in what's called the Bhulok, which is a middle planetary system. It's not the best, it's not the worst, it's kind of in the middle, like you have middle income, or middle class, very middle class planet. plants. And this, you go one up this guva, and then up beyond that is swagalo. And so, and in swagalo, people have longer, much longer durations of life. So much so that they're sometimes called amaras. Amara means they're deathless. Well, they die, but because their lifespan is very long, and their enjoyments are even better than Hawaii. So people are enjoying very nicely. So the king of the heavenly planets is named Indra. So Indra, one time, he offended his spiritual master, his guru was Brihaspati. You say guru, Guru Van, Brihaspati. So his spiritual master cursed him to become a pig. Bid. Vara. A pig. So you think, that's quite a change of standard of living, right? But, he got it after a little while, he got into it. He had his partner pig, and his family children pigs. And he, the farmer gave him some, nice feed along with his, food. So he's kind of getting into it. Same thing. So then, Lord Brahma, after some time, because he wasn't there administering, because he has business there in the heavenly planets, then Brahma came and said, "Come on, you gotta come now. I'll negate the curse. Come back into the heavenly planets. Do your job, do your business." So you know what Indra said?
No.
I'm sorry. This is the way. This is called evolution. Because generally, there's nothing more in life than taking care of the body and the bodies of our family, friends, and nation. This is called. Yeah. So, Rishabdev, you've heard of Rishabdev, the incarnation of Krishna. He spoke to his 100 sons. He gave some very strong advice to his sons, just like parents have to give to their children. Right? So he said, Nunam pramatto kurute vikarma yad indriya priti garat vidoti. He said, out of bewilderment, pramatta, matta means badness, and pramatta means very bad. Vikarma means people, they do sinful activities. Why? Just indriya priti garat vidoti. They are just looking to satisfy the senses of the body. I think I wrote this down. I wanted to read this verse. It's really a nice verse. Here it is. Yes, it is. This is what he said, the translation of that verse. When a person considers sense gratification the aim of life, he certainly becomes mad after materialistic living and engages in all kinds of sinful activity. He does not know that due to his past misdeeds, he has already received a body, which, although temporary, is the cause of his misery. We're thinking the our bodies are very nice. But you don't have to have a material body. In fact, your natural condition is not to have a material body. Did you know that? Actually, each one of us is spiritual. Satchi Ananda Veda. But in illusion, we're thinking, this body is everything. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhika Bunoy Shravanadi Shuddha Chitte Korayudai. The spirit soul, by nature, is an eternal servant of Krishna. Our business, our wealth, our happiness is to be engaged in service of Krishna. But we've forgotten that by being influenced by the material nature of Maya. It's something like, in the olden days, they used to have clutch cars. Did you ever drive a car with a clutch? Yeah. Did you? Never did? It's a little scary. You're going up a hill and you have to change gears. Anyway, but one good thing about a clutch car is you can pop the clutch. Did you ever pop a clutch? Is that something in the past a long time ago? So sometimes say your ignition didn't work. well, ordinarily you'd be stuck, right? But on a clutch car, you can start it going, and then just pop the clutch and then boom, boom, the engine starts. That's something like you and me. How's that? How's that, you ask? Well, because our natural propensity is service to Krishna, not sense gratification, not kama. Atmendriya priti, no, Krishnendriya priti. Our natural condition is to do things to please Krishna. So, bhakti yoga, the practice of devotional service, is to begin that process again, and then when you begin, it becomes natural. Boom, just like the car starting, you pop the clutch and go, you get into it. Yes, yes. It becomes second nature, it becomes natural. So how do you do that? Well, that's the practice of, like we said, Krishnendriya priti. Learning how to satisfy Krishna's senses is bhakti yoga. Bhakti yoga. Now, from the kama side, from the lust side, we all have, different interests. And later in this chapter, which it's not going to be focused on by the next speaker, but Krishna tells Arjuna there are various sitting places of lust. Just like if you have an enemy, you want to know where they are. Sometimes they say, keep your friends close and your enemies. Did you ever hear that?
Yeah.
Because you know where they are, then you can be ready, right? In case of some disturbance. When I was going to college, I had a roommate. And in college, usually, the number one person you fight with is
Your roommate.
isn't it? That's what happens usually. So anyway, every night I had a bunk against lower bunk. I was up on the top one. So what would you do? Every night, just as I was going to sleep, he would light up a cigar. I'm up there with the smoke. So I can understand. That is my enemy, right? just to give an example. So, but Krishna said, we must know where our enemy is located. So he says, here are the sitting places, the places of kama that reside in the body. Where? The senses, the mind, and the intelligence. How is that? How is that? The senses, the mind, and the intelligence. Lust sits in your senses. Okay. So say, I'm not trying to make any controversy, but say, for example, someone likes to smoke cigarettes or cigars. Right. What happens when they don't smoke? What happens? If they go for a period of time, there's some itchy, some pain, there's a withdrawal, so they have to, so the senses say, come on, give me. And the mind says, there's this problem going on, why don't you find a cigarette? Isn't it? I mean, it's that way with every kind of material activity you got. That, it may be, in Krishna consciousness, one of the restrictions we follow is no eating of meat, fish, or eggs. Why? Because we only eat food that's first offered to Krishna. Krishnendriya priti. Ichadhare prema. So Krishna says, don't give me that stuff. I want patram, pushpam, palam, fruits, flowers, leaves, vegetarian food, right? But somebody might have some attachment for that kind of thing. And the tongue says, I want that food. I want that hot dog over there. That taste, the taste is there. Or, somebody, I like this particular thing. Get me that thing. So then the senses are dictating and the mind is following. Oh, yes, let's go. Go and get this. And then if we're stopped in our pursuit, then what happens? The intelligence kicks in, right? Sometimes you find that thieves are very, very resourceful. They can burrow into it or drill into a vault. I don't know if they do that anymore, but they used to. In very ingenious ways. The intelligence, right? So the intelligence will find some way to get that drug, to get that ganja, to get that food, to get that hamburger, whatever it might be. So the senses pushing, the mind, and the intelligence are so we're conditioned in this way, in this material world, to follow the dictates of those things. And by doing so, we remain entangled in a cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease that doesn't stop. It goes on and on. And so the human life, our life, is particularly meant to stop that cycle that keeps on going of senses, mind, and intelligence simply to satisfy the body. When Sanatana Goswami went to meet Lord Chaitanya to become his disciple, he said, "People call me a very intelligent man." They call me, you know what's the intelligent man in Hindi? Pandit. Yeah, Pandit. Yeah. They call me a Pandit. And he was quite smart. He was a very smart guy. He knew like 5 languages. He was the secretary of state for a gigantic kingdom. He was ruling the kingdom. Without him, the king was having a really hard time. So he said, people, they call me Pandit, but you know, I'm such a Pandit, I don't even know who I am. What kind of Pandit is that? And I don't know why I'm suffering the threefold miseries from other living entities, from my own body and mind, and from natural disturbances. I don't know. So what kind of Pandit am I? So this is our position. Our position is, even though we have developed and we've come to a position in this Western world of thinking, oh, we're very advanced scientifically, we know so many things, we have different degrees, still, we don't even know who we are. And we don't know how we can get out of the threefold miseries. This is our position. And that's because of karma, our eternal enemy. How can we get out of this habit of giving in to our karma? This is the question that will be answered by Krishna in this chapter. So I'm not going to go into it in detail because we don't have too much time. But this is really, really important. How can you get out or stop that habit of giving in to karma, your desires for material enjoyment? Krishna says that. It's very, very difficult, but it's possible. How is it possible to overcome kama, that desire for material enjoyment? How? He says, by regulating the senses. By regulating the senses, and how? By regularly engaging those senses in Krishna consciousness, in service to the master of the senses. Lord Chaitanya said like that. He said, "Na dhanam, na janam, na sundarim, kavitam vajagadisha kamaye, mama janamani janamanishware bhavatad bhaktira hoitu kikune." He said, don't give me wealth, na dhanam. We're all looking for wealth. Where we get some wealth. But Lord Chaitanya said, don't give me wealth. Na dhanam, na janam. Don't give me followers. Na sundarim. I don't want, beautiful women or beautiful partners to don't me. That's not what I want. What do I want? Mama janmani janmanishware bhavatad bhaktira hoitu kitoye. Birth after birth, the opportunity to engage my senses in your service, Krishna. So it's up to us to what can we do in our lives to utilize our senses, utilize our mind, and utilize our to satisfy Krishna. By doing so, what happens is you get a taste, a different taste, that's different than anything you can get in the material world. And on the strength of that taste, of when you do act to satisfy Krishna, that taste is so wonderful, it's so exciting, it's so dynamic, that the material enjoyment that you might get from trying to satisfy the senses becomes paltry. If you have $1 million, and somebody says, can I give you $5? Can you give me $2? No big deal, right? So the happiness, or the taste of satisfying Krishna's senses, not just because I say it, but Krishna says that. Arjuna says that. Narad Muni says that. All the great acharyas say that. That is the boat which will help us cross over and be able to conquer our eternal enemy of kama, lust. And the easiest, most convenient way that we can do that in a regular time, we talk so many ways, about so many things anyway, but it begins with utilizing our tongue to serve Krishna. You know how?
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Cheto Dadvana Marjana. It cleanses the kama from our heart, you know. So, we like to keep things clean. So you can clean the outside of your body from, using soap and water. But then there's a little problem. How do you clean it inside? Right? I mean, yogis, sometimes they take a piece of cotton cloth and they swallow it and they can get their lymph clean. Have you ever seen that? Or they do this neti. So at least it gets your sinuses clean. But how are you going to clean your consciousness, your heart? How are you going to do that? What is the method? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said there is a method. And what is that? It's going to cleanse the kama from our heart. How? Cheto Darpana Marjana. By chanting the holy names, the effect of by potency of the holy name cleanses the heart from the dust of kama that's been accumulating for years together. And we can begin to experience desire for serving Krishna. So that's a wonderful thing. You won't find it anywhere else in any university or college or grade school, but you'll find it here in Bhagavad Gita, and you'll find it given by Srila Prabhupada and Chaitanya and the great acharyas. So I encourage you to take up chanting the holy names, reading Bhagavad Gita in a regular way, and you'll experience a different kind of happiness, a different kind of pleasure that will help you not only in this life, but in your trajectory back home, back to God, and the eternal spiritual world. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. We have 2 or 3 minutes.
Yes, any questions?
One question. Or not?